Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hello, this is Dr. Doreen Downing, and I am host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. I invite guests to tell stories about what it might have been like to not have a voice. And we never really know until they show up and they tell us their story. So that's partly why this podcast that I offer is so intriguing and why we have so many listeners, because you never know what you're going to hear and you never know what you're going to learn. So today I'd like to introduce you to my new friend, Ivna Curi. Hi, Ivna.
Hello, Doreen. I am happy to be here, and I'm excited to be part of your podcast because I think it's such a wonderful theme, and the way you do it is phenomenal with all these stories, which is the way to go.
Yes, I have a bio, and I'd like to read that because you've done quite a bit, and I want people to know right away before we actually dive down into your history. I'd like to have them understand what you are currently doing. So you start out by saying everyone deserves to be heard and respected. And that's why Ivna Curi helps people confidently speak their minds unapologetically at work and in a way that is heard, understood, and taken seriously with assertive communication skills and without coming across as aggressive. She provides workshops, coaching, and talks, and she also helps companies create a respectful speaking up culture that drives engagement, productivity, DEI, and innovation. And she is the host of the Speak Your Mind Unapologetically podcast show, a TEDx speaker, has more than 20,000 students, has an international MBA from INSEAD, and is a Forbes contributor and a former corporate leader. That's a big breathful, but that's a big life already you've led, huh?
Thank you. Yeah, and a lot of it happened after I was able to find my voice. I would say the majority. So
Yes, that's the whole point of this podcast. And I like to start out with a bio so that people say, wow. And then we dive into a story where people begin to hear, how did she ever do that from that kind of history? How did she become somebody who's a TEDx speaker when she had a history like you're about to tell us? The first part of the program usually does go back into her early history. And that was funny. I almost said herstory, which is true too. So, sweetheart, tell us your story about not having had a voice as a youngster. Maybe start, where were you born, by the way?
yeah, I was born in Brazil, and I would say probably didn't have a voice for 3 decades.
Yes.
And a lot of it came from the fact that, and I think a lot of us relate to this, especially as girls and women, we grow up wanting to be nice, the nice person. And some guys as well experience this. There's this association of, hey, if as a child, if I'm nice, if I'm obedient, if I'm a good listener, if I'm quiet, if I'm pleasant, all the time, if I don't challenge people, I don't speak up, I just stay quiet and do as I'm told. My teachers loved me. I was the favorite. I was talked about as a role model of what a student should be, of what a child should be. The quiet, obedient girl that's super nice. And when other adults saw me, they were like, "Oh, your daughter's so nice. Oh, she's so nice." And so nice became the me. I identified as a nice girl. And that went on and on until age about 25, when I discovered that it wasn't that nice to be nice. I got fed up with that word and I said, that's not an identity. What is my identity? What do I want people to call me? But it took a very long time. And on top of that, I struggled because I was shy. I was so socially anxious. I'd walk around the street and my head down. I'd hit objects all the time because I was avoiding eye contact. That happened at school and university. I would avoid looking at people. Because of that, I was bullied, of course. I had a stutter problem for most of my, I think until age probably 12 or 13 or something like that. And I didn't feel like I even knew how to speak. Like I couldn't find words. I wasn't articulate at all. I just couldn't find the right words. And here's what happened for a very, very long time, until my 30s. People would, even when I tried to talk, people would yawn, and within 10, 20 seconds, they'd get distracted and they'd go off and try to find something else, look at their phone, they'd turn away, they'd yawn. And I felt like nobody wants to hear what I have to say, even when I tried speaking up.
This is amazing already. My goodness, the history of boxing yourself already into the good girl. And I certainly know what that's like. It was, actually going to school was a place where I got acknowledged, and the teachers, I performed well at school. So
Yeah, me too.
I certainly relate to that part of your story, and being able to shine in a certain environment, but also hiding. My goodness, it sounds, when you said the eye contact and running into lampposts and walls because you're not
Yeah.
even having you're trying to hide as you are living in your life. My goodness. Yeah.
I'm embarrassed of my existence. In a way, I thought I was a smart girl. That was also part of my identity. Oh, I'm intelligent. I do math. I do physics.
Mm.
I'm a smart girl. But at the same time, I felt like useless. I felt like an imposter, like many do. Like what I had to say was not valuable. What I had to say was not worthy of people's time. And therefore, I should stay quiet and only listen. I should only listen and
Yes,
ask
yes.
questions.
The reason why I'm so animated right now is because that's why I went into psychology, is because I became a really good listener. And I understand that stance is being able to be somebody who values yourself because of the listener. And here we are today helping people be more expressed, both of us. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but I can
interesting.
also understand, for your point of view, the way you describe people not paying attention to you, the way that they would get distracted or look away, the feedback you were getting was something where you didn't feel valued or heard.
And it was complicated because ultimately, at some point, right, towards the end of my 20s, I had such incredible life experiences. I had traveled the world. I had done this magnificent, like top MBA in France and Singapore. I had met all sorts of people, had worked in 3 industries. Yet when I came to talk about myself, people would still yawn and then they talk about their burgers.
Yeah.
And I thought, what's wrong? What's wrong? It's clear at some point I realized it's not that I'm uninteresting. There's something else going on. And some of the other issues that you talked about in terms of the struggle was, one of the things was that I felt like I was very non-confrontational. I don't like conflict. I just don't like when people look upset. I don't like disappointing people at all. And I'll ruminate over it. If I feel like I'm hurting someone or I'm disappointing them, I'll spend all night thinking about it. So obviously that doesn't contribute as well, because I don't want to create any scenario where I say something where I hurt someone's feelings or they think highly of me and I disappoint them. So because I spoke and said something stupid. And it's just constantly in my head. It was on in my head all the time, like overthinking every single word. Before I spoke in a meeting, I'd probably rehearse in my head around 10 times and then still not communicate in the meeting. Still
Rehearsing 10 times, they're already on to the next topic.
exactly. It was a night. Every meeting was a battlefield. It was incredibly unpleasant.
Oh,
And that went on from like personal life to work life to leadership life. It just was a nightmare, not being able to communicate or speak up or express myself.
okay. Something happened because that's not who you are now.
Yeah, this took a long time to get to, but it definitely did change. And I had a lot of also just fears of being perceived as difficult, aggressive, because people already knew me as a quiet, obedient girl. But eventually things had to change. And I shared with you last time we talked that what really triggered me to change was this one job where, and I talk about this man all the time because he changed my life. His name was Mario Sete. And he was my boss in this new job. He hired me, and he was the most assertive person I think I've ever met in my life. Not only that, he held me accountable to be assertive. Now, I didn't know what that was at the time. He made me speak up all the time. So it was the first job where I had to lead a team. I was in meetings all day with clients, with suppliers, with stakeholders. It was a medium-sized company, and I was managing their supply chain, doing supply chain management for them. And I had to deal with a lot of people who are a lot older than me and who had a strong personality, who were able to speak up, and many of whom did not want to speak to me. Plus my team members who were really frustrated with everything that was going wrong in the company and also didn't want to do what I told them to do and were unhappy. So the whole thing was really chaotic. And as much as I wanted to run away from it and stay quiet, my boss forced me to actually speak up in every single situation, every day. It was crazy tense.
When
but it
you
was
say forced, was it there's a good kind of forcing or
good
pushing?
force.
Okay, that I was hoping it was that and not with a stick behind you.
Let me give an example. Okay. Very tense situation. Had a really difficult team member. And my boss would ask me to do things. My team member wouldn't do anything. I wasn't able to get the team member to do anything. And so my boss said, hey, what's going on? What do you need to do? Okay, if this person does not do this work, what are you going to do? So he would ask me questions and make me say things like, hey, I need to give this person a chance. And if they don't do what I'm asking them to do, they don't comply with what needs to be done and are a team player, then I'm going to have to let them go. But he would make me make that decision, which I was avoiding because it was a very uncomfortable conversation. And then he said, you need to communicate that to the person. You need to tell them what your expectations are, and you need to communicate the consequences if they don't fulfill your expectations. And I didn't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's the conflict avoidant part of you that you just talked about.
Oh, yeah. It was like the hardest thing. So what would my boss do? Are you willing to have the conversation? I said, yes. So I'd go down. He called me 1 hour later. Did you have the conversation? No. Ivna, you have to have the conversation. What are you waiting for? Have the conversation. An hour later, I didn't have the conversation because it's too scary. He would call me again. Ivna, did you have the conversation? No. Why didn't you have the conversation? What's going on? You need to just have the conversation. It's important for you to have the conversation. And he just do that until I had the conversation. And that happened in all sorts of different scenarios with suppliers, with coworkers, with my team, with all sorts of people. It was fascinating. It was transformational.
I guess I'm really glad it wasn't a stick that was poking you. It felt like just a gentle kind of holding you. Because I love that first question he asked, are you willing? That to me feels, if you find your willingness, it may take a little while, like you're demonstrating to us, but it feels if you start from willing, then you can help yourself move forward into a difficult situation like you're talking about.
No, I never felt, he's my hero. I never felt like he was obliging me to do anything, making me aware of what the right thing was to do, not telling me what to do, just saying, hey, what do you think is the right thing to do here? Yeah. It would come out of my mouth. And then he would hold me accountable for what I said.
Yes.
That was the difference because He was a man who was very outspoken, assertive, kind, and generous, but also very firm. And the reality is, he saw in me the daughter that he wanted to have.
Oh,
He was fathering me.
uh-huh.
I was very lucky.
Yeah.
So that was his gentle, fathering kind of way of building me up to be a leader in that organization. And that's exactly what I needed. I didn't need empathy. I needed someone to push me. And that was the year that transformed my life. And I think that when we find people, because I had, I think, 14 bosses. The bosses, my best bosses were those that were assertive and that held me accountable to have the hard conversations, to speak up, to share my thoughts in meetings. He'd do that as well. After a meeting, an important meeting that he was in and I was in, he'd call me to his office and say, hey, what do you think? What's your advice to me? What do you think I should do? What do you think we should do? Hey, what's your opinion on this? Even if I was the most junior person in the room. So there are many facets to it.
Who's ever listening today, I hope that you're really hearing not only how to be somebody who steps into a situation that's scary for you, but also how to support and lead others if you happen to be in situations where you are helping others perform. We're going to take a quick break because I want to get back to you and hear way more stories about your not only your struggle, but your transformation. Thank you.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back with Ivna Curi, and already we're learning so much about coming from a shy little one who is just eager to please, and yet pleasing didn't get her that far. And we've also been hearing about a mentor who, I was going to say a mentor who meant so much to you because he was somebody who actually listened the best out of you. And he didn't go tell you what to do. He actually asked you what you thought would be the best thing and then helped you take those steps towards the best thing. And it usually had to do with speaking up, just like what
Always.
yeah, just what we're talking about today. So yeah, Ivna, say more, whatever seems to be coming to you at this point.
So that was a phase. And then obviously later I learned what assertiveness is, and I started to formally study assertive communication. And that's when I had another major jump in my ability to speak up, because assertiveness is about, and I talk a lot about it because I'm such a fan. If I look back, when I look back and I think, okay, what was the number one skill I wish I had learned earlier that would have made the biggest difference in my life, personal and professional? The answer I came up with was assertive communication, because it is the ability to speak up and express ourselves in a way that is respectful, which I'm all about. I love the value of respect, calm, which I naturally am, and effective. And that's what was missing. That's why people were yawning at me. That's why people were ignoring me. That's why people weren't understanding what I had to say, because I wasn't effective. I wasn't able to influence through my words. So when I learned more about how to be effective and influential with the way I communicated and spoke up, then I started to get results. And that really motivated me to speak up more. And then more recently, another thing that I've been really focusing on, that in my entrepreneurial kind of thought leadership, trying to find my own voice here on podcasts, speaking up, TED Talk in front of audiences, it has been very hard for me as well, because that's a whole different dimension. But this idea towards, and even at work as well, I embrace imperfect. I embrace speed of implementation. I embrace bias towards action. I embrace not doing my best. If I'm doing my best, it's not good.
Oh, that's several things you just said. Just turns what we think upside down. Doing your best is not really what the goal is.
No, I never do my best ever. And if I do my best, it means I'm spending too much time on it.
Oh,
There's an opportunity cost there. So I'd rather do more things, do things quickly, because speed, I realize, and there are studies that show that speed is more important than quality or perfection. Like, you want some quality, but you don't want perfection, because there's actually studies that show that if you do a lot speed, you'll get more quality because you're learning as you're doing. But if you just think to do the perfect thing, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be even close to perfect. And the interaction, the speaking up and getting feedback from other people, I learned that is where the value is. That's where the quality comes through. That's where the effectiveness is. And so it really helped me. And one of the things that I started to do, especially as I transitioned, I was scared of like posting something on LinkedIn, telling people what I was doing, recording my podcast, being live on video, doing the first time I did in college, a little presentation for my class. I cried 5 minutes. I cried and I couldn't sleep that night. 5 minutes.
You were just from already what we're learning today. You hadn't learned all of what you've been learning in college. You were just still pretty undeveloped.
Completely pushing that courage moments. I do not think about confidence. I ignore my confidence when it comes to speaking up. I really don't care
more. This is so fascinating. You're saying all the things that, they want to be effective. They want to be the most they can be. They want to be confident. So say more about the confidence.
I could care less about my confidence. I care about my courage.
Oh.
I reward my courage because I know with courage, I'll speak up and then the confidence will follow. The first time the first time for anything that I have to speak is scary. It's so scary. Yet what I need to focus is on, good job, Ivna. You had the courage. You went there, even though you felt like an imposter, like you didn't know what you were saying, that nothing you said was valuable, that no one was going to listen to you, and that it was a complete disaster. Check. You did it, courage. And then after, I feel good. I feel a sense of confidence take over. So for me, it's always courage first, confidence follows. But in order to act, I don't feel confident. And that's okay.
That's okay. This is truly transformational, what you're telling us today. And I hope people are really taking in this fact that it's courage that we're trying to fill ourselves up with, so that then we could take steps. Not that we got to get the confidence first. It's first get the courage. Thank you. I love that new point of view that I think is going to reach so many people today. Say more about, we're transitioning a little bit more now into, we're already getting a lot of your jewels and gems and nuggets of wisdom, but tell us a little bit more about transforming into who you are today and more about what you do offer today.
Oh my gosh, first of all, so liberating. That anxiety of interacting with people went away. When you show up with peace, at ease in interactions, no matter if it's because I had an issue with really senior authority people, and I would overthink. I would feel like a little miniature little ant that they could step on. And so that dissolved, and now I'm able to interact almost as an equal in conversation with people that are technically way superior. And that's so liberating. You're not having to worry so much, be so anxious about things.
What would you say was the turning point there? Like, that sounds like a real important learning. I'm sure there's a long story, but let me just say it this way. If you can give a tip to somebody today on what you just said about how to feel comfortable in front of authority figures, what would you say?
Okay, so for me, my dad was a big authority, and I think that's where it came from, that whole fear of authority. He's a good guy, just more authoritarian. So I think for me, what happened was I started to really analyze, like really observe very closely these authority figures. And I started to notice everything that was wrong with them. And when I started to notice that these poor souls, yes, they were doing great at work, they had the great titles, but oh boy, their families were a mess. They had issues with their health. Like they had all these other aspects of their life that were falling apart, and it humanized them. And I felt, you know what? I'm doing better in certain areas. So we're not that different. Yeah, you're better in a few things, but I'm better in other areas. It's okay. Let's talk.
Oh, I like it. I like it. What you're talking about is reducing them as giants and bringing them down to the human level. And you're human, and there's no upper or lower. It just is. And thank you. I thought that was a really good message for us.
Took a
Well,
while, but I got there.
yeah, I'm hearing a lot of what you've been telling us today is that it's taken a while. Tell us a little bit now before we have to close what you do, what you offer, who you work with.
Thank you for that. I help professionals develop assertive communication skills, these same skills that I had to learn the hard way. And I also taught my teams. And I bring it to organizations. I bring it especially to women, diverse groups, minorities, because it's even harder. The fear and the risk of retaliation and backlash and being perceived as aggressive and difficult are higher. And in order to overcome that and be able to speak up, there are skills that enable us to do that, like I said, in an effective, respectful way. So I bring that to companies and help the professionals and the leaders develop those skills in all sorts of different situations. And I actually welcome anyone who wants to get started learning a little bit more about how to speak up assertively and respectfully. Check out my website. I have tons of free resources there as well at assertiveway.com.
I like the idea of assertively, but you put in a nice word that I think is really important for us in terms of being able to connect with other people is approaching conversations with respect.
My favorite value of all times.
I'm getting that. I've heard it several times today, and that's why I wanted to emphasize it, because I think that's what I want listeners to actually embrace is being respectful is a way to connect with others.
Respectful to others and respectful to ourselves and to our voice.
Oh, yes. I feel like already I have a deep respect for you, and I can't wait to be on your podcast.
Yes.
And that's coming up. It's Speak Your Mind Unapologetically.
Yes,
And
that's
we'll
another
get to
resource.
continue our conversation. The one last word you might say or idea that you would want to share with us before we close.
I want to share that 100% of my breakthroughs in my life and my career came from speaking up, from those courageous moments. So if you feel like there's not enough exciting opportunities coming your way, start speaking up. Listen more to this podcast. Find your courage. Take Monday mornings or early mornings are a great time to fuel that courage and act on it. And surround yourself with assertive people and people who speak their minds in a very respectful way. And I think you'll find your voice again and have the courage to speak it out and share it with the world.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Ivna.
Thank you, Doreen.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.